Hi, it's Ashley with At Home with Ashley, and this week we're doing something I have been wanting to try for so long: stained glass. I use it a lot in my house for decorating, so I thought maybe I could just make it myself. Turns out it's hard and expensive, but despite those things, I thought I could kind of show you in case you want to try it too. Okay, so let's talk about what is stained glass. Stained glass is not the process of staining glass as you would think, but it's taking colorful decorative glass and then cutting it to create artistic designs. You see them on windows, doors, other architectural features. For centuries, they've been used in decorating churches, cathedrals, lots of religious buildings, but you can use them in your home too, and you can probably see them in other public buildings. I think the allure of stained glass is that when light shines through it, it creates different color and pattern in your house. And also it's custom. Usually to have it look really good in an area, it needs to be custom made for that area, and the supplies are expensive, the skills are an expertise. So with all of that, it makes it feel really one of a kind and important. I want to give you some tips for finding classes near you. I recently went to my first class and I loved it. And the easiest way to find a class is to just Google stained glass classes near and then your city and state. I did that and I could only find something that was like an hour away. No, thank you. So the way I found my class is I was searching on Facebook Marketplace. I saw some stained glass for sale, and in the caption of the sale, it said, if you want to learn stained glass, I'm teaching it at a local rock and gem shop. So I signed up. When you are making stained glass, you need a pattern. I like to go on Etsy to find mine. You can also buy books. I bought one on eBay for really cheap. I don't like those as much because they're not as modern. You can also look on Pinterest to try to find some free designs too. The first step to making stained glass is figuring out where you can create it. And you kind of need some specific things. Like, it's good to be next to an outlet. It's good to be next to a window. It's good to have a fan in that room, or you could have a portable fan. And it's good to not be working over carpet so that you can easily clean something up. If you do have carpet, you could roll out some linoleum. You could work on top of that because it's easier to clean up with the glass shards everywhere. Good lighting is important, and if you're lucky and have a utility sink, that is a big bonus. Okay, so let's talk about the supplies you need to start making stained glass. And this is the hard part about this project, is that it's expensive. You're not going to be spending, $50. You're going to be spending $300 to $400 minimum to get started with stained glass. And each time you make it and you need more glass and more copper foil and more solder, it's still costs money. So safety with stained glass is a big thing, and I'm going to kind of give you some basic, but you should probably read more because you're working with lead, you're working with glass, and those two things are a little bit dangerous. First thing you want are safety glasses. You're going to be using this when you're cutting your glass, when you're grinding it, when you're soldering it, just because you really want to protect your eyes. You'll also want a mask or a ventilator to use during those steps as well, because you don't want to be breathing in glass dust or lead. It's also important to have some gloves. So you're going to use cut resistant gloves while you're cutting and grinding, and then you're going to use some heat safe gloves while you are soldering. The first step in creating the stained glass is to break the glass or cut the glass. And your first tool is going to be a glass cutter. I have two different types, and I ended up liking the one with kind of the grips on the side. Just my hand had a better time giving enough pressure with that one. And what you do is you push that along the top of the glass surface, and it creates a score line. So then you can break the glass. When you're using the glass cutter, it's also important to use glass oil, and this will help the glass cutter slide along the top of the glass. I like to put mine on a cotton swab and then rub it on the top of the cutter before I cut, just because I find it's less messy than putting it in the reservoir that's like inside of the cutter. You're also going to need some running pliers, and these can have like a frowny face at the front. And once you make your score line, you're going to put it on either side of your score line, and you're going to push down, and it kind of folds the glass really cleanly, and you get a great cut. So I love these. They're my favorite tool for glass cutting. As breaking pliers, and these are nice to have when you can't use those running pliers anymore because your pieces are too small. This kind of like breaks off a chunk, and so those are nice to have as well. Okay, for glass cutting, you're gonna need some glass. And my local craft store has a good amount of these. If you have a stained glass supply store, you could do that, or you could buy stained glass online. You're gonna wanna have a good cutting surface. I'm just using a self-healing mat. You could use plywood, you could use drywall, just something to protect your work surface. You're going to want your pattern for this step. And I'm using this cute little beetle pattern. A good tool to have are pattern shears. So what they are is they look like normal scissors, but they have a third blade, and so you use them to cut out your pattern. And the third blade cuts it out a little bit more than you normally would, and that leaves space for the copper foil that will be added later on. So after your pattern's cut out, you can also use a Sharpie to trace around it. And then that Sharpie mark is what you're going to use as a template for cutting out and grinding. It's good to have a stand for holding your glass pieces. I just bought one at the craft store that's pretty easy to use. I've seen people use like plastic bins with cardboard between the pieces of glass. That works too. It's just anything to keep them upright. You don't want them laying down because the weight of them will start to crush the bottom pieces, so that's no good, and it's hard to get to the bottom stuff. It's really important to have a dustpan with a broom while you're doing this project because you're going to be breaking the glass and there's going to be shards everywhere and they're going to be on your work surface. So it's good to clean them up as you go so that you don't get cuts on the side of your hand or your arm as you're working. Another handy tool for cutting your glass is to use a Cricut. I'm using this instead of the pattern shears and the Sharpie just because I already own it. So I'm cutting out a piece of vinyl that will be used as the template. It's going to be kind of like a sticker that you just put on top of the glass and then you can cut around it. The next supplies you need are for the glass grinder. And the primary tool is going to be your grinder. It has a motorized wheel in the middle and on it is a grinder bit, and that's going to rough down all the uneven cuts, and even if it is even, making it so it fits perfectly on your template. And this also smooths all the edges, so after this your glass shouldn't cut you anymore, which I thought was nice to know. You put water in the bottom of the tray of the glass grinder and it just grinds off all of the extra glass, so that's really nice. A really handy thing to have with this is a spray bottle, so when you're grinding, the grinder wheel kind of can warm up and this will keep it cool. This will prolong the life of your grinder if you spray it when the glass coming off looks flaky, and this also prevents glass from flying as much, in my personal opinion. And then after grinding, you're going to need some cleaning supplies, so glass cleaner and a lint-free cloth, and you're going to clean each piece really well, especially on the edges, because the next step is going to be adding copper foil, and if it's not cleaned, the copper foil won't stick. So it's very important to get it nice and clean. It will also be nice to have a splash guard. After one time of using my grinder, I was like, I need one. So this kind of goes over and it kind of keeps stuff from splashing up on your face. So that's really nice. Mine was $16. Why didn't I buy one before? I don't know. So that's everything you need for grinding down that glass. It's really fun after you've cleaned the pieces to see them come together on top of the pattern. And if the pieces don't fit, you can kind of mark them with a Sharpie and then put them through the grinder and clean the Sharpie off. And then you'll have like perfectly fit pieces, which is the goal, because the next step, they need to all fit nicely together. Let's talk about the steps you need for copper foiling. There's only two. The first item is copper foil tape. So this is copper on one side and adhesive on the other. You just wrap it around the glass, and the copper is what will help the solder attach the pieces together, and then you get like that nice leading look. And then you can just cut the copper with scissors or an X-Acto knife, normal household scissors. The next thing you need is a fid, and this is a plastic tool, and all it does is it pushes the copper foil onto the glass, and you want to make sure it's really adhered well so that the solder will also adhere well. And you could use like the back of a Sharpie, you could use a stick from your backyard. I just bought the ones that they suggested. They're very affordable and I like how they work, so there's that. The last thing you need with stained glass is soldering supplies. The main thing is a solder iron, and you're going to want one that can change temperatures, and you're also going to want one that has a stand and cleaning stuff with it, or you can buy it all separate. I just found it most affordable to buy it all in one, and I kind of like the efficiency of having it compact. The next thing you need is a solder, and I suggest using 60-40 for stained glass work, and that means that there is 40% lead in this, and the metal is what fills in the seams. So your solder is like the paint you're gonna melt it, and the way you melt it is with your paintbrush, which is the solder iron. At least that's the way I like to think about it. You also need flux. Flux helps the solder move smoothly over the metal, and so you just paint some of this on, and then you can solder. And then the next thing you need is a flux brush, and you want to buy something that's specifically made to use with chemicals, and then you're only going to use it with flux. So you just use this as a paintbrush. I just use the cap from the flux and pour some in and then get it out with the flux brush to apply it. So once everything is all soldered, let it cool down and then you're going to clean it up. And what I like to do is just use water and a magic eraser, and that gets off all of the extra like goo and lead and flux that you need to get off so it'll look clean and look its best. And then once that's dried, the very last step I take is I use Pledge, and I spray it on a rag and then I clean and buff the glass really well so it really sparkles in the sun. So this is the first project I've made at home, not in a classroom setting, and it's a little rough, I'm not gonna lie. I am happy that I chose something that's like, it's out in my son's playhouse, so it's not something I see every day, but it was a good chance to really try out my skills and get them better and test some stuff and be able to buy all my supplies, so now I can keep going and I'll get a little bit better each time. And I definitely learned the hard way some things I need to do better, but I thought you would enjoy seeing my very first project, and if you're wanting to try stained glass, I totally suggest it, and I hope some of these supplies are helpful for you. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and you can let me know in the comments if you want to see more stained glass stuff. I have a project I'm thinking with a different sun catcher that's a little bit easier, so if you'd like to see that, let me know, and if you're not already, please subscribe.